RTB 101, where we help to equip you to share your faith more effectively. And I'm joined today by Oxford mathematician, Dr. John Lennox. It's our honor to have you here today, Dr. Lennox. Welcome.
Thanks for the invitation.
I am so compelled by learning more about your story. Recently, you were involved with the film Against the Tide, and we're going to tell our friends how they can see that film coming to them very soon at the end of this segment. But I want you to share a little bit about your decades of experience in sharing your faith. You've participated in several debates with prominent atheists over the years. I'm wondering what motivated you to do that?
Well, I didn't start there. I simply believed, even as a boy, that I should share my faith. It was not something I should keep to myself. And I began in simple ways of sharing things one-on-one. And one of the most helpful things that I discovered, but not for some time, was the statement made by the Apostle Peter in his first letter, where he says that we are all Christians are to be ready to give an answer to all those who ask us a reason for the hope that is within us. And it dawned on me that this is not talking about preaching. It is actually talking about a response to a question. So it's talking about small groups or one-on-one conversation. And it puzzled me, because how do you get people to ask you? And that developed later on into favoring, and it's the heart of the Oxford teaching system, the Socratic method. That is learning to ask questions. And there was a seminal incident when a younger student at Cambridge, I mentioned this verse to him, and I said, I think I'm ready to give answers, but nobody asks me. And he laughed and he said, have you ever thought of asking them? And I said, what do you mean? Well, he said, ask them for the hope that is within them. Well, I said, if they're not believers, they have no hope. He said, try asking them. And that led to a revolution in thinking, because what I discovered is the best way to get to know people at a more than superficial level is to keep asking them questions. And I try, though I don't always succeed because I'm Irish, I suppose. I try to, when I meet somebody new, to keep asking them questions until they ask me one. Not theological or philosophical questions, but questions that get to know them. And I discovered that people love to be asked questions about themselves. And eventually, unless they're crashing bores, they will ask you a question. And so you seek to develop a friendly relationship rather than being under inner pressure that you've got a Christian message that you've got to give. And that, of course, means that you react badly, you come across badly, and it's the only opportunity you get. So I take from this the sheer importance of making friends with people, and gradually, as the opportunity arises, to share what they believe is important in life, so that you have the opportunity of doing the same thing. And one of the most important things in that process is to always give people space. Be the first person to back off, because no one likes to be intimidated or forced into a corner. And it's all those kind of things I decided not long ago, somebody was listening to me speak, to put into this little book, Have No Fear. You may not have come across it, but it might be useful. It's the cheapest book you'll ever buy.
Well, I think that's a really good tip. You gave a lot of really good tips there, actually, but maybe we could talk a little bit about fear, because I think that many people might be intimidated to step out in that risk of, how do I overcome my fear? Like I see the biblical command to have given it a reason for the hope that's in me, but I feel nervous about that. Do you have any thoughts about helping us take that next step?
There are really two kinds of fear that we experience. The first is the fear of what people think of me, and we need to get through that. But there's also the sense of responsibility, especially when it comes to public debate and discourse and so on. But getting through the fear barrier, let me concentrate on the one thing that people fear the most. And that is that they can't answer a question they get asked and they're stuck. And I know people who've been silenced for years, Christians, because they made a mess of it. Now, my advice from my own experience is always be prepared to say you do not know if you do not know. Never pretend to know. You'll never lose face by saying, I don't know, but you can capitalize on it. And I work with some very intelligent people. I often get questions. I haven't an idea how to answer them. And what I have done in my life is say, look, that's fascinating. I'm not sure that I even understand it completely, and I'd like you to explain it more. But listen, I'd like to think about that. Could we perhaps have a cup of coffee next week? Now, that has two effects. One, it tells people that you don't believe you know everything, and that's very good. Secondly, it tells them that you're actually interested in what they've asked, that you're taking their questions seriously because you're prepared to do a bit of research on it. Now, one of two things can happen. Sometimes they'll say, well, actually, that's not my real difficulty. My real difficulty is whatever. And you make progress. Or they say, you know, I'd like you to do that because it really bothers me. And then they tell you a little bit more. And as a result of that, the friendship deepens. The sad thing is, often people, and here's a second little tip that I found useful, they come across folks like me who've been doing this all my life, and you and others like your folks and Reasons to Believe, and they're totally overwhelmed. So I say, look, you don't have to read 100 books on apologetics. What you should do is find out what the key question is that's on the mind of a friend you're talking to, and then do your work on that one question until you find an answer that not only works for you, but for them. And then that'll lead to a second question. And you'll never forget the answers to those questions because they are coming out of live problems. The trouble is, if we read all the books that various intelligent people have written and their answers to questions, we might as well not bother because we don't remember the answers because the questions have never been real for us. Mm-hmm. And it's this business of getting involved in real questions that will take us to thinking, take us to logic, but also take us to scripture. And of course, there's a central theme of my life is that the danger is that as we grow up as Christians, we spend less and less time thinking through scripture and understanding it more and more.
Very good. And I want to let everyone know once again, they can go to againstthetide.movie. Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Lennox.
My pleasure.